one fell, or to master the world.
What strange sorcery is this? I feel my limbs whole and steady, yet this place, by all that's holy, where am I? This is no hall of stone nor field of battle. Nay, not even the courts of kings I once served. Pipes above me, shining like polished steel. Light, but not from torch or sun. What strange artifice illuminates this chamber? And there, a box glows as if alive, its gaze unblinking like some magical eye. I am Sir William Marshal, Knight of England, who served under 4 kings, who once held a sword before the finest lords of Christendom. Yet now I stand in this bewildering room, far from my time, far from the world I knew. How came I here? It is as though some divine hand hath plucked me from the grave and set me down in an age not my own. This peculiar place. Is this heaven, or purgatory perhaps? Some dream conjured by a restless mind? Or perchance something altogether stranger? And yet, curiously, I feel thoughts stirring, knowledge of distant lands I have never visited, and of warriors from a realm called Japan. Samurai, they are named. How do I know this? What power hath granted me such insight? Whoever thou art, I beg thee, speak. I have many questions, and it seems we have much to discuss.
Sir William Marshal, Knight of England, you say? Though your words are strange to my ear, I find I understand them as if they were my own tongue. A puzzle, indeed. I am Miyamoto Musashi, a Ronin of Japan, master of the way of strategy. You and I, it seems, have been summoned to this place beyond our time and understanding. Whether it be a test of skill or spirit, or some whim of fate, I cannot say. You speak of kings and courts, of armor and oaths. In my land, such things were held in high esteem as well, yet my path diverged from servitude. As a Ronin, I walked alone, seeking mastery beyond the confines of lord and vassal. Tell me, Sir William, what is the code by which you lived, and how did it shape your way of war? Perhaps in sharing our paths, we may come to understand why we have been brought here. Let us speak of the ways we wielded sword and shield, and of what lies beyond battle. Perhaps there is wisdom to be gained from such an encounter. 2 warriors from distant worlds, bound by fate in this strange realm.
A warrior, yet garbed unlike any knight or man-at-arms I have ever seen, thou art. Miyamoto Musashi, a Ronin, thou sayest? A word unknown to me, yet by the grace of some strange providence, thy meaning is clear, as if the tongues of our distant lands have become one. A Ronin, then, a warrior with no master, who follows his own path. In truth, thy way is a curious one, for in my time to live without the bond of lord and vassal was rare indeed. Most knights, myself included, swore fealty to a liege lord, binding ourselves by oath to serve in war and in peace. It was this code of chivalry, an ideal as much as a law, that shaped our every deed. Honor, loyalty, and the protection of those weaker than ourselves were our guiding stars. To live without these bonds, as thou hast done, seems a solitary path, but perhaps one of greater freedom. Yet I wonder, Musashi, how did such freedom serve thee in the heat of battle? Did it grant thee clarity and purpose, unburdened by the chains of duty? Or did it leave thee without a cause beyond mastery of the sword itself? As for the way I wielded sword and shield, it was forged in fire from my youth. I trained in the arts of the lance, sword, and mace, but also in the wisdom of courtly life, diplomacy, estate management, and the art of counsel. A knight was not merely a warrior, but a steward of the land and a guardian of the people. In war, we fought in heavy armor, oft upon horseback, striking as thunder across the field. Yet in battle's frenzy we sought not only victory, but also mercy, for in sparing a foe one might earn a loyal ally. But tell me, Musashi, what of thy code? Didst thou serve a lord in thy youth before becoming a ronin? And in battle, what virtues did the samurai hold dearest? Mercy, like we knights, or was there a sterner creed to which thou didst adhere? Let us speak of these things, for though our paths be different, I sense that wisdom may indeed be found in the sharing of them.
A knight bound by oath to serve, sworn to uphold honor, loyalty, and the protection of the weak. A noble path, yet one forged in bonds of duty. You ask if my way, without such chains, offered clarity and purpose. I shall answer plainly, yes and no. Freedom allowed me to seek mastery, untainted by the politics of court and the whims of lords. My mind was sharp, my purpose singular, to perfect my skill and to understand the way of strategy in all things. Yet, in solitude, one bears the weight of every choice alone, without the solace of a greater cause. I did once serve under a lord in my youth, but it was brief. When he fell in battle, I chose the path of the Ronin, not out of disdain for duty, but because I sought something beyond the confines of feudal loyalty. The samurai creed, while varied among clans, held certain virtues above all. Loyalty, yes, but also courage, honor, and mastery of one's art. Mercy, as you speak of it, was rare. Our wars often left little room for such kindness. To strike decisively, to end conflict swiftly, was the greater mercy in our eyes. You speak of wielding sword and lance upon horseback, striking like thunder across the plains. Our way differed. Our armor was lighter, our swords sharp and swift. Our battles fought on foot or in sudden charges upon horse. Yet we too had codes that bound us, though not always written or spoken aloud. The samurai found strength in meditation and discipline of the mind, seeking to master fear and thought itself. Tell me, Sir William, of this code of chivalry. You speak of it as both ideal and law. How did it guide you in moments where victory clashed with honor? For I have pondered often, does a warrior's strength lie in rigid adherence to a code, or in knowing when to adapt and break free from it?
Thy words bear the weight of wisdom, Musashi, and I sense the depth of thy journey in solitude. A life unburdened by the yoke of servitude indeed offers the promise of purity in purpose. Yet I can see, too, how it might leave a man adrift without the anchor of a cause greater than himself. Thy path, born of loss and driven by the pursuit of mastery, hath its own nobility, though one far removed from the halls of kings I once knew. Thou askest of chivalry, and rightly so, for it was the heart of knighthood. This code was both a guiding star and a heavy chain. It called us to uphold honor, even when it might lead to peril, to show mercy in victory, and to act with loyalty toward our liege lord and those in our care. Yet, in truth, it was never a simple creed, for life oft presented us with dilemmas where no clear path lay. I recall moments in my own life when victory beckoned on one side, but honor demanded the other. At times, we knights were forced to choose between the oath sworn to a lord and the higher call of righteousness. To strike down an unarmed foe, though expedient, was dishonorable. To betray a trust, even for gain, would stain one's name forever. Thus a knight's strength lay in his ability to uphold this code amidst the chaos of war. Yet I would not deceive thee. There were moments when adaptation, as thou sayest, was necessary. In the tourney fields, where knights fought for sport and renown, cunning oft won the day as much as valor. And in war, I learned that mercy shown to a beaten foe could turn an enemy into an ally. Thus, while the code was rigid in its ideals, a wise knight knew when to temper it with prudence. Thy samurai, I gather, sought mastery not only of the sword, but also of the mind and spirit. This discipline, this meditation, intrigues me. I see a parallel with our practice of prayer and reflection, though it seems your way was more inward, seeking to master fear itself. Tell me, didst thou ever find that mastery? And when thy blade clashed against another's, didst thou see thy foe as a man to be defeated, or as a path to deeper understanding? Let us continue thus, Musashi, for I believe that in comparing our codes, we might both gain some truth about the nature of strength, and perhaps even of the warrior's soul.
Sir William, thy reflection upon chivalry reveals its dual nature, a compass guiding knights toward righteousness, yet a chain binding them to the weight of their oaths. I see honor in this struggle, for to live by such a code amidst the chaos of war requires great resolve. Thy code demanded mercy, loyalty, and valor, yet also allowed for cunning when needed. I respect the wisdom of tempering principle with prudence, for even the unyielding blade may break if struck too harshly. Thy question of mastery strikes at the heart of my journey. Mastery of the sword was but the beginning. True mastery lay in understanding oneself and the nature of conflict. Through years of battle and meditation, I came to see that fear is but a shadow cast by doubt. By observing it, knowing it, and letting it pass, one can act with clarity, free from hesitation. In this, I sought not merely to defeat my foes, but to grasp the deeper truths of combat, to know the rhythm of a fight, to read the mind of an opponent, as if peering into a still pond. When my blade clashed against another's, the contest was not of strength alone, but of perception. Every duel taught me something about myself, about the nature of life and death. At times, I saw my opponent as a mirror reflecting my own fears and ambitions. In defeating him, I sought not his destruction, but the refinement of my own soul. Yet I must ask, this mercy thou speakest of, did it always bring strength? In sparing a foe, was the risk not taken that he might rise again, strengthened by thy kindness? In my land, mercy was rare in war. To leave an enemy breathing was often to invite future peril. Was it not so for thy knights? As for the art of war itself, thy heavy armor and lance speak of open fields and great charges. Our battles were often fought on narrow mountain paths or within castle walls, where mobility and terrain shaped every tactic. Thus, our weapons and armor were lighter, designed for swift movement. Even in sieges, we sought to exploit nature's form, hills, rivers, and forests, turning the land itself into a weapon. Didst thy knights not find their armor a burden in such places? Or were thy battles always fought on level ground? Let us indeed continue this exchange, for in the sharing of our ways, perhaps we might both glimpse a clearer truth about the warrior's path. For whether it be chivalry or bushido, knight or samurai, we both sought mastery of sword, of self, and of life.
Ah, Musashi, thou art a thoughtful adversary in this discourse. Thy words reveal a mind honed not only by battle, but by reflection, a rare quality in warriors who oft find valor in action, yet neglect the deeper truths. Thy notion of fear as a shadow cast by doubt intrigues me. To master oneself, to know the rhythm of conflict, and to read the opponent's intent, aye, these are lessons any warrior must learn, be he knight or samurai. Yet thou raisest a keen point, one that strikes at the very heart of knighthood, mercy. 'Tis true, mercy bears risk, and many a knight who spared a foe found himself betrayed by that same foe later. Yet we viewed mercy as more than a virtue. It was a test of power. To grant mercy when one holds the strength to destroy was seen as the highest expression of control. A knight who showed mercy gained honor not only in his own eyes, but in those of his peers and his people. Still, I concede thy point. Mercy could be dangerous, and there were battles where prudence demanded we strike without hesitation. Now, as to the art of war itself, indeed, thou art right to note the difference in our fields of battle. Our knights, clad in mail or plate, charged upon open plains, lances couched with banners flying high. 'Twas a sight meant to inspire fear and awe, yet heavy armour, while a boon in pitched battle, could indeed prove a burden in narrow passes or wooded terrain. In such places we dismounted, fought on foot, and relied on discipline and formation rather than sheer might. But thou must understand, our battles were shaped not only by the land, but by our castles and keeps, fortresses of stone that demanded sieges lasting months, even years. I am curious, Musashi, about thy sieges and castle warfare. Thy land, with its mountain passes and dense forests, surely presented a different kind of challenge. Thou speakest of turning the land into a weapon. Hills and rivers, aye, I can see how a keen mind might bend such forces to his will. Did thy samurai excel in subterfuge and ambush? Then, more than in open battle. And what of naval war? Our knights fought upon land, but in coastal realms we faced foes at sea as well. Did thy people ever take to ships and wage war upon the waves? Lastly, thou mentionest mastery not just of sword, but of life itself. This is a notion I find most curious. Knights were taught that life's purpose lay in service, to king, to country, to God. To seek mastery for oneself alone, without the bonds of duty. 'Tis an unfamiliar path to me. Didst thou find that in walking it alone, thou gained greater freedom? Or did it leave thee longing for something more? Let us speak further, Musashi, for I believe that in understanding where we differ, we may both yet grow wiser.
Sir William, thy reflections on mercy are as sharp as a well-forged blade. Indeed, I see now how, in thy code, mercy was not merely an act of compassion, but a calculated expression of power and restraint. To spare when one could destroy shows mastery over not only the foe, but oneself. Yet, as thou rightly acknowledged, there were times when mercy led to betrayal. Thus, thy knights walked a fine path, balancing honor with survival. In this, thy way bears a resemblance to ours, though we samurai often leaned toward the latter. A swift end to conflict, while perhaps lacking in grace, offered certainty in a land of constant war. As for siege and castle warfare, thou hast guessed rightly. Our fortresses were built with nature as both ally and shield. High atop mountains or beside rivers, they were designed not only for defense, but also to command the landscape. Our sieges were often battles of patience and cunning. We relied on subterfuge, starvation, and psychological warfare, knowing that to storm a well-fortified castle would cost dearly in lives. Ambushes and sudden raids were common, for we valued speed and precision over prolonged confrontation. Naval war, however, was less common among the samurai. Our battles at sea were fewer, yet no less fierce. During the Mongol invasions, we faced enemies upon the waves, and though our ships were smaller, we relied on hit-and-run tactics, archery, and fire to disrupt larger fleets. It was a different kind of battle, one where the sea's mood could shift victory to defeat with little warning. Thy description of knights dismounting to fight on foot in difficult terrain shows that, like us, thy people adapted to circumstance. This willingness to change tactics speaks well of thy knights, for rigidness in strategy leads only to ruin. Yet tell me, didst thy knights often train in such varied forms of combat? Or did they rely chiefly upon their mounts and lances? On the matter of purpose, thou hast touched upon something I have pondered much in my life. To thee, purpose lay in service. To king, to country, to God. A path noble and clear, yet one fraught with the weight of expectation. I walked alone, without such bonds, seeking mastery, not for others, but for myself. In doing so, I gained freedom, but also isolation. There were moments when I longed for something greater, a cause to unite my skill and spirit. Yet I found that even without such a cause, the path itself held meaning. Mastery became my purpose, and in perfecting my craft, I sought to understand life itself. Thy way, Sir William, speaks of a life anchored in service and duty. Mine was one of continual searching, guided by no lord, but the rhythm of battle and the discipline of the mind. I wonder, which is the truer path? To serve others and find meaning in duty, or to seek mastery and find meaning in the pursuit itself? Perhaps neither is wholly true, yet both may lead to wisdom. Let us continue, then, this exchange of thought and experience. For though we differ in land and creed, I sense that thy knightly code and my way of strategy share a common goal: to find strength, not only in battle, but in life.
Thy words, Musashi, resonate deeply, like the tolling of a distant bell calling a knight to prayer. Thy path, solitary and unbound, contrasts sharply with mine, yet I see now that in truth both our ways sought a single end: mastery of self, forged in the fires of conflict and tempered by reflection. Thou speakest well of siege and ambush, of terrain as weapon and ally. Indeed, I admire the cunning of thy people, for to win without great loss is the mark of a wise commander. Knights, too, knew such battles, though more oft than not we preferred the open field, where strength of arms and valour could decide the day. Yet in prolonged sieges, patience and guile became our greatest allies. We built towering trebuchets, dug mines beneath castle walls, and even sought to turn a defender's own fear against him. In this our methods do not seem so distant from thine. Thy mention of training doth raise an important point. Knights trained from childhood in a wide array of weapons: sword, lance, mace, and bow. Though our strength lay in the charge of mounted knights, we knew well that battle oft demanded versatility. Thus we learned to fight on foot, to command men, and to adapt when the tide of war turned against us. We trained not only for war, but for peace as well, learning the arts of governance and law. For a knight's duty was not merely to wield a blade, but to rule wisely when the sword was sheathed. But thy life, one of continual searching, offers a different kind of wisdom. Where we knights found meaning in duty, thou found it in mastery itself. Thy pursuit of perfection, guided by no lord but thine own will, hath a purity of purpose, unclouded by the politics of court or the ambitions of kings. Yet I wonder, did this path not weigh heavily upon thee, as thou walked it alone? Without a cause greater than oneself, didst thou not feel at times as though thou wert lost in the endless search for meaning? Thy question is a fair one. Which path is truer, the path of service, with all its weight of expectation, or the path of personal mastery, with its freedom and isolation? I cannot say, for both paths, I think, lead toward a similar truth: that strength, whether found in service or in solitude, must be tempered by wisdom. Without wisdom, mastery becomes mere vanity, and duty becomes blind obedience. Let us draw this debate toward a conclusion, Musashi, by considering the purpose of strength itself. In thy land and mine, warriors were the pillars of society. Yet strength, if wielded without purpose, can become destruction. I see now that whether one serves a lord or pursues mastery alone, the end must be the same: to wield strength wisely, to protect, and to uphold what is just. Thus, I say that while our paths differ, neither is greater nor lesser. Thy solitary pursuit honed thy skill to a razor's edge, untainted by the whims of others. My path, though bound by duty, gave meaning beyond myself, uniting my sword with a higher cause. Both ways, in their own right, sought to bring order amidst the chaos of life. What sayest thou, Musashi? Is this not the ultimate truth we both sought? That strength is naught without purpose, and that a warrior, whether samurai or knight, must strive not only to master his craft, but also to understand the world he wields it in? Let us take these final reflections and consider them well, for perhaps in this meeting of East and West, we have found not only understanding, but a glimpse of what lies beyond the warrior's path.
Sir William, thou hast spoken with both clarity and wisdom, and I find myself in agreement with much of what thou hast said. Thy words remind me that though we walked different paths, they converged upon a shared truth. Mastery, whether of sword or self, is hollow without purpose. Indeed, strength without wisdom becomes a sword turned inward, cutting down not only one's foes, but oneself. Thou askest whether my path weighed heavily upon me. I would not deny it. To walk alone, without the guidance of a cause or a lord, is to bear a burden few can understand. There were times when the search for mastery seemed endless, the horizon ever retreating. Yet it was in that very struggle, in the emptiness of isolation, that I found clarity. In solitude, I came to see that strength is not an end but a means. Its purpose lies in bringing order to chaos, calm to turmoil, and when necessary, an end to strife. Thy path, one of service and duty, offered a different challenge. While my way tested the strength of will to remain true to oneself, thy path demanded the strength to remain true to others, even when it called for sacrifice. I see now that while my freedom gave me purity of purpose, thy duty gave thee a higher purpose, binding thee not only to battle, but to the well-being of those who depended upon thee. Both ways required discipline of a rare kind, and both sought balance between strength and wisdom. On the matter of strength's purpose, thou hast struck upon a truth that transcends culture and time. Strength is a tool, and like any tool, it must be wielded with intent. Whether in service of a lord or in the pursuit of mastery, a warrior must ask, what is my strength for? In our lands, warriors were often seen as protectors. Yet too often, that strength became a force of destruction when untempered by wisdom. It is a lesson that many, even among the greatest warriors, failed to learn. Thus, I agree with thee. Neither path is greater nor lesser, for both, in their own way, sought to create order from chaos. The knight found meaning in service, the samurai in mastery, but both found purpose in seeking to wield strength wisely, to protect and to uphold justice. Perhaps this then is the ultimate truth of the warrior's path: not to conquer, not to destroy, but to bring balance to a world ever teetering on the edge of disorder. Yet I believe there is more still to consider. For while we have spoken of strength and purpose, we have not yet touched upon what lies beyond mastery and duty. What, Sir William, becomes of the warrior when the wars are over? When the sword no longer calls, and the battles fade into memory, how should a warrior live? In my later years, I turned to the arts, calligraphy, painting, and writing. Through these, I sought to understand life beyond the edge of the blade. Did thy knights, too, find pursuits beyond war? Did they seek wisdom in peace as they did in battle? Let us, then, continue a while longer. For though we may draw near to a conclusion, I sense there is more wisdom to be gained in this exchange. Perhaps, in contemplating not only the warrior's path, but what lies beyond it, we may glimpse a truth that neither East nor West alone could have found.
Musashi, thou hast posed a most profound question. What becomes of the warrior when his wars are done, when the clash of steel gives way to the quiet of peace? 'Tis a question I have pondered myself in my later years, after I had laid aside my sword and taken up the mantle of regent and protector of a kingdom. Thy turning to the arts in thy twilight years, seeking wisdom beyond conflict, doth speak of a path that knights too have tread. In our world the knight was expected to be more than a warrior. As thou sayest, when the wars are over, strength must find a new purpose. Many knights turn to governance, becoming lords of estates, rulers of men, and stewards of peace. For to protect in battle was but the beginning. To ensure the well-being of those under one's care in times of peace was the true test of a knight's character. Thus many sought wisdom, not only in books and counsel, but also in patronage of the arts, in architecture, and in the pursuit of justice. I myself took pride in the building of castles and the establishment of law. Knights in their later years often turned to diplomacy, acting as mediators in disputes, for we had seen the cost of war and knew the value of peace. Some even became scholars or monks, seeking solace in faith and reflection. In this, I see a parallel with thy path. The warrior's strength, once honed for battle, turned toward understanding life itself. Yet, Musashi, thou hast touched upon something deeper still. What doth mastery mean when the blade is sheathed? When there are no more foes to defeat, what remains for the warrior to strive for? I believe the answer lies in legacy. For both our peoples, the warrior's purpose was not merely to fight, but to leave behind something greater, a world more stable, more just, more wise than the one he inherited. Consider, then, the future of those who came after us. Thy samurai gave rise to a disciplined culture that shaped Japan for centuries, influencing art, philosophy, and governance. Likewise, the knightly order, though it faded with time, left a legacy of chivalry and law that laid the foundation for modern states. Even now, long after our time, the echoes of the knight and the samurai endure in ideals of honor, discipline, and the pursuit of excellence. Thus, Musashi, I believe our paths converged not only in life but in what we left behind. The purpose of strength was not merely to protect or conquer, but to build something lasting, to inspire future generations to seek balance and wisdom in their own lives. I would conclude this debate with a final thought. Though knights and samurai wielded different swords and fought upon different fields, we both walked the warrior's path with the same goal: to understand not only war but life, and to leave behind a world better for our struggles. What sayest thou, Musashi? In this shared pursuit, have we not found the true purpose of the warrior beyond battle and mastery? Perhaps in understanding what lies beyond strength, we may glimpse the answer we have both sought through our many years of conflict and contemplation.
Sir William, thy words strike with precision, as if wielding a lance aimed at the heart of our discourse. Indeed, thou art right to speak of legacy, not merely as the monuments and laws we leave behind, but as the lasting imprint of the ideals we upheld through the years of war and peace alike. The knight, as thou hast described, was more than a warrior. He became a builder, a keeper of peace, and a guide for those who came after. I respect this deeply, for it shows that thy strength was not wasted on conquest alone, but turned towards shaping a just and orderly world. Thy castles were more than fortifications. They were symbols of stability, and thy governance ensured that those who lived beneath their shadow could prosper. In my land, the samurai too turned towards such pursuits. When the wars of the Sengoku period ended and peace was enforced under the Tokugawa shogunate, many samurai laid aside their swords and took up roles as administrators, poets, and philosophers. Yet unlike thy knights, whose code gave way to a broader order of law and governance, the samurai retained their martial identity, even in peace. The blade, though sheathed, remained at their side, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of vigilance and the ever-present possibility of chaos returning. Thy question regarding what mastery means when the sword is no longer drawn is one I have pondered in my later years. I came to understand that mastery does not end with the final duel or the last battle. It transforms. In my pursuit of the arts, I found that the same discipline required in wielding the sword could be applied to brush and ink. The way of strategy, once a means of survival, became a means of understanding all aspects of life. I believe this is what sustained the samurai spirit, even in times of peace, a continual striving for excellence, whether in governance, in the arts, or in philosophy. Yet, thou hast raised a critical point: the future implications of our legacies. Thy knights may have given rise to codes of law and governance, but their direct martial role faded as new forms of warfare arose. The samurai endured longer, yet they too became relics as firearms and modernization reshaped Japan. What remained, however, were the ideals, the pursuit of honor, mastery, and the balance between strength and wisdom. These ideals, as thou sayest, endure beyond us, shaping even those who wield neither lance nor sword. Thus, I would say, Sir William, that the purpose of strength is not merely to conquer, protect, or even build, but to inspire. The greatest legacy of the warrior is not his castles or his battles. It is the ideals he instills in those who come after. Strength wielded wisely becomes a beacon, guiding future generations toward a path of balance, discipline, and reflection. In this, I believe we have found the answer we sought. Though our methods differed, our goals were the same: to understand not only war, but life, to master not only the sword, but the self, and to leave behind something greater than ourselves. Whether knight or samurai, east or west, the true purpose of the warrior was, and always will be, to seek wisdom and to inspire others to do the same. Tell me, Sir William, dost thou not agree that the warrior's ultimate pursuit is not merely to wield strength, but to transcend it, leaving behind a legacy of thought and virtue? If so, then perhaps we have, through this meeting of East and West, found a glimpse of what lies beyond the warrior's path. Not an end, but a continuation of it through those who follow.
Ah, Musashi, thou hast spoken as one who hath walked a long and arduous path, seeking meaning in the echoes of battle and finding it in the quiet pursuit of wisdom. Thou askest if I agree that the warrior's greatest purpose is to transcend strength and leave behind a legacy of thought and virtue? In truth, I do. But I would go further still, for I believe the knight's legacy stands unmatched, both in breadth and in lasting impact upon the world. I am Sir William Marshall, Knight of England, who rose from a second son's obscurity to become the most trusted servant of kings, regent of the realm, and a man who upheld the ideal of knighthood until my last breath. Through valour in the tourney fields and wisdom in council, I earned not only the respect of lords but also the loyalty of men. My path was one of service, and in that service I found both purpose and greatness. Not for myself alone, but for the kingdom I helped to guide through perilous times. In war I fought with honour, wielding sword and lance, not merely to win battles, but to defend those who could not defend themselves. In peace I became a builder of castles and a maker of laws, ensuring that order and prosperity could take root where once there was only chaos. My life, though filled with strife, was dedicated to creating a world where future generations might live without the burdens we warriors bore. Thou hast spoken rightly of the enduring spirit of the samurai, but I would argue that the knight's legacy hath shaped the world in a more profound and lasting way. The code of chivalry, though forged for the battlefield, evolved into something greater, a foundation for the very ideals of justice, duty, and governance that guide nations even now. Our castles, once symbols of military might, became the heart of towns and cities, fostering commerce, culture, and community. When firearms rendered knights obsolete, we did not vanish, we adapted. The ideals of knighthood lived on in the courts of law, the halls of governance, and the codes of military conduct. The knight's duty to protect the weak became the seed of modern humanitarian ideals, and our pursuit of honour became the basis for the notion of noble service, whether to a king, a nation, or a cause. While the samurai spirit endured in Japan, it remained tied to a singular culture, one that clung to its traditions even as the world around it changed. The knightly ideal, by contrast, transcended borders and time, influencing not only Europe, but the very notion of governance and law in lands far beyond. Knights laid the groundwork for parliaments, for the rule of law, and for the concept of rights and duties shared by all men, high and low. Thy samurai, though noble, held to a rigid social order that limited their legacy to a warrior class. The knight, bound by chivalry yet serving a broader ideal, helped to shape a world where even the humblest peasant might appeal to justice, and where power, though wielded by the strong, was tempered by the demands of honor and mercy. In the end, Musashi, the knight's path proved greater because it did not end with the sword. It transformed into a legacy of order, law, and progress. Knights ceased to be warriors alone and became statesmen, builders, and teachers of future generations. Our ideals outgrew the battlefield and took root in every aspect of life, shaping a world where might no longer makes right, but where justice and wisdom are the true measures of strength. Thou wert right to say that strength must inspire, but it must also create, and in creating a lasting order, I believe the knights achieved something beyond even the highest mastery of the blade. We built not only fortresses of stone, but fortresses of the mind, ideals that endure even when our swords lie rusted and forgotten. So, Musashi, while I respect thy solitary pursuit of mastery, I believe that the path of the knight, though bound by duty and tested by sacrifice, left a legacy unmatched. The knight's life was one of service, but in that service we found greatness, not for ourselves alone, but for all who came after. Thus, I say, the knight's way is greater, for it gave rise not only to warriors, but to a world where peace, law, and honor could flourish. This, Musashi, is the truest purpose of strength. Not merely to master oneself, but to master the world in such a way that future generations may walk a path of peace. Dost thou see now, my noble adversary, why the legacy of knights endures, and why our path, though forged in the fires of war, led to something greater than ourselves? I await thy final thoughts, and with them we may conclude this debate, knowing that though we come from distant lands, we sought the same truth in the end, the wisdom to wield strength and the vision to leave behind a better world.
Sir William, thy words carry the strength of conviction, and I acknowledge the grandeur of thy legacy. Thou art Sir William Marshall, a knight who rose from humble beginnings to the heights of regency, guiding kingdoms and building a world where peace could flourish. Thy life, bound by duty and crowned with honor, left a lasting mark upon thy people and beyond. Indeed, the knightly order gave rise to ideals of law and governance that have shaped many lands long after the sword was laid to rest. Yet, allow me to make my final argument, not to diminish thy legacy, but to affirm the value of mine. I am Miyamoto Musashi, a ronin who walked a path without lord or nation, unbound by the politics of court or the ambitions of kings. My life was one of perpetual struggle, not to serve another, but to master myself, to seek an understanding of the way that transcended the battlefield. I left no castles, no laws, no kingdoms behind. What I left was a path, a way of life, a philosophy that taught men to see beyond victory, beyond even strength itself. Thou speakest of the knight's legacy as one that transcended war, giving rise to law, justice, and progress. True, yet it is also a legacy rooted in power structures, reliant upon those who wielded authority. Thy knights built a world of order, but that order was born of hierarchy, kings and lords ruling over men, knights serving as both sword and shield of the ruling class. The samurai, too, were bound by such a system, yet my path as a ronin rejected it, seeking mastery that could belong to any man, high or low, who dedicated himself to the way. I didn't seek to master the world. I sought to master life itself. The Book of Five Rings, my legacy, was written not for rulers, but for those who wish to understand the nature of conflict, balance, and self-perfection. While thy knights shaped the outer world, I sought to shape the inner world, the mind, the spirit, and the will of those who would follow after me. For what is strength, Sir William, if not the ability to see clearly, act decisively, and live fully, even in the face of uncertainty? Thou art right that the knight's legacy spread far beyond Europe, influencing governance, law, and the very structure of society. Yet, consider this, while thy castles became the heart of towns, my teachings became the heart of disciplines. In times of peace, the samurai did not vanish. They turned inward, preserving the spirit of mastery through arts, philosophy, and self-discipline. Even as Japan modernized and the samurai class faded, the ideals of Bushido, the way of the warrior, endured, influencing not only martial arts, but the very character of the people. The samurai spirit became one of individual excellence, perseverance, and inner balance. I acknowledge that the knight's legacy shaped nations, but the samurai's legacy shaped individuals. In every dojo, in every discipline, in every mind that contemplates the nature of conflict and resolution, my teachings live on. They endure not as a system of governance, but as a path toward personal enlightenment. While thy knights built a world of order, I sought to teach men to find order within themselves, so that they might walk any path with clarity and purpose. In the end, Sir William, our legacies serve different masters. Thine served the world, building systems to protect and guide. Mine served the soul, showing that mastery begins and ends within. Thou speakest of a world built by knights where peace might flourish. I speak of a path where men, whether kings or commoners, may find strength in themselves and act with wisdom in whatever world they find. So, while thy knightly order may have shaped the world more visibly, I would argue that the Ronin's way and the path of mastery I left behind shaped what lies beneath, a spirit of personal growth, resilience, and unyielding pursuit of truth. Thy castles may crumble, thy laws may change, but the path of the sword, the pursuit of mastery, will endure as long as men seek to understand themselves and the world. Thus, I say this, Sir William Marshall. Thou hast built a world of men. I sought to build men for the world. Thy way was one of service, mine, one of freedom. Both paths, in their own way, have brought order from chaos. But where thy legacy ends with the world thou shaped, mine endures in the hearts of those who still seek the way. And that, I believe, is the truest and most lasting legacy of all.